Rain tapped softly against the tall courtroom windows, but inside, tension hung thicker than the humid summer air. Alina sat silently, her hands folded neatly on the mahogany table, a small gold wedding ring still glinting faintly on her finger. Across from her, Daniel, her husband of 15 years, leaned back in his chair with a smirk that could slice through glass. His expensive grey suit, his smug demeanor, and the way he kept checking his watch, screamed one thing: he'd already moved on. The judge cleared his throat, flipping through the final stack of divorce papers. Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan, are both parties certain they wish to proceed? Daniel didn't even hesitate. Absolutely, Your Honor, he said, his tone casual, almost amused. Then he turned to Alina, lips curling. Let's not drag this out any longer, darling. You've already wasted enough of my time. Alina didn't respond. She stared at her trembling hands. She wanted to scream, to ask him why he'd changed so completely. But the words stayed locked behind her heart. The truth was, she'd loved him, still did, in a way only broken hearts can love. She'd stood beside him through medical school, through endless late nights and ramen dinners, believing their sacrifices were building a future together. And now that he was a successful surgeon in Chicago, he wanted nothing to do with the woman who helped him get there. Daniel's new fiancée sat in the back row, a blonde woman half Elena's age, tapping her red nails against her phone screen, taking selfies in the courtroom like it was some twisted celebration. Elena's lawyer whispered, "It's okay. Just breathe. After today, you'll finally be free." But freedom didn't feel like victory, it felt like loss. The judge lifted the gavel slightly. "Before I finalize this dissolution, we have an additional matter. Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan were named beneficiaries in the late Mr. Raymond Carter's estate. Both parties should be present for the reading of the will, scheduled immediately after these proceedings." Elena's head lifted for the first time. Her father's will, she hadn't expected that to be mentioned today. He had passed only a month ago, and she hadn't even found the courage to visit his home since the funeral. Daniel chuckled under his breath. "Oh right. Your dad's will. I'm sure that'll be..." Emotional. Elena's eyes glistened. Her father, Raymond, had been a quiet man, retired military, disciplined, and fiercely protective of her. They hadn't been wealthy, but he'd always promised that she'd never be left with nothing. The divorce papers slid across the table, toward Daniel. He picked up the pen and twirled it between his fingers. "This is it," he said. "The end of our little charity project." Elena's lips trembled. "Charity? Come on, Elena," he said, laughing softly. "You think I didn't know you were holding me back? You and your simple life dreams. I wanted more. I deserve more." The words hit her like shards of glass. The courtroom blurred. She could hear her own pulse in her ears. She remembered nights when he was exhausted from the hospital, when she'd cooked his favorite soup and massaged his shoulders, whispering how proud she was. She remembered how they used to laugh about growing old together, about naming their children after his grandmother. Now he was mocking her for ever believing in him. He signed the papers with a dramatic flourish and pushed them toward the clerk. "Done," he said, standing, straightening his suit jacket. "I've got a dinner reservation at 7. Don't be late with the will thing. I'd hate to miss dessert." Alina stood slowly, her body trembling. Her lawyer placed a reassuring hand on her back, but she barely felt it. Her eyes met Daniel's one last time, and for the briefest second, she thought she saw hesitation, regret. Maybe, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. The judge's gavel came down. Divorce finalized. The sound echoed like thunder in her chest. Outside, Alina stepped into the drizzle. The cold wind whipped her hair around her face as she stood on the courthouse steps, trying to steady her breathing. People walked past, umbrellas open, voices blending into the rush of city life. She whispered softly, "You'll see, Dad. I'll be okay." Her phone buzzed. A text from her father's lawyer: "Please meet in conference room. Be the reading of Mr. Carter's will begins in 15 minutes." Alina wiped her eyes, squared her shoulders, and walked back inside. As she entered the room, she noticed Daniel, already there, smiling, confident, his fiancée beside him, chewing gum and scrolling through her phone. The lawyer An elderly man with silver hair and sharp glasses stood by the long oak table. "Please, have a seat," he said gently. "We'll begin shortly." Alina sat across from Daniel. Her stomach churned. She knew her father loved her. But what if he'd left something to Daniel out of generosity? Her father had once adored him. Daniel leaned forward, smirking. "Don't look so nervous. Maybe your dad left us a few bucks for all those family dinners." Alina ignored him. Her mind wandered back to the last conversation with her father. He'd looked at her with tired eyes and said, "People show their true colors when money's on the table. Just promise me one thing, sweetheart, don't lose your kindness, no matter how cruel the world gets." The lawyer cleared his throat, unfolding the papers. "This is the last will and testament of Mr. Raymond Carter." The room fell silent. Alina folded her hands, her breath shallow. Daniel's leg bounced under the table impatiently. The lawyer began to read, "To my beloved daughter. Alina, I leave everything I own, my home, my savings, and the Carter Medical Foundation, which I built in her name." Daniel's smug grin faltered slightly. The lawyer continued, his tone deliberate, "And to my son-in-law, Daniel Sullivan." Daniel leaned forward, smirking again. "Here we go. I leave a message." The lawyer adjusted his glasses and read slowly, "Daniel, you may have forgotten the meaning of family, loyalty, and love. But I haven't. Consider this message your reminder. A man who abandons love for pride ends up rich in regrets and poor in soul." Daniel's face froze. His fiancée stopped scrolling. Elena's eyes widened. Her father had known. The lawyer placed the papers down and looked at Alina with a faint smile. "Your father was a wise man, Mrs. Sullivan." Elena's throat tightened. She tried to hold back tears, but they slipped free anyway. Daniel sat back. Speechless for the first time that day, the silence in the room was deafening. And in that silence, something shifted. Lena wasn't the broken woman he'd mocked anymore. She was the daughter of a man who saw through everything. She stood, gathering her purse. "I guess we're both free now, Daniel," she said softly. But her voice didn't shake this time, as she walked out into the rain again. The city lights blurred into soft halos, and for the first time in months, her steps felt lighter. The storm had passed, but a new story was only beginning. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Elena's modest apartment. She stood at the small kitchen counter, stirring a cup of coffee she barely had the strength to drink. The will reading replayed in her mind over and over, her father's words echoing like thunder in the quiet room. "A man who abandons love for pride ends up rich in regrets and poor in soul." It had been the closure she never knew she needed. Yet, beneath the quiet satisfaction, there was an ache, a hollow space left by years of sacrifice and betrayal. Alina opened her laptop, scrolling through the Carter Medical Foundation documents. Her father had named her the sole director. The numbers made her dizzy, nearly $3 million in assets. Several small clinics across Chicago, and one fully funded hospital wing under construction. She whispered to herself, "Dad, you really did all this for me?" Her phone buzzed on the counter, Daniel calling. She hesitated, staring at the screen, until it went silent. Then came the text, "Daniel, we need to talk. It's important." She deleted it without replying, but life had a way of circling back, especially when pride was involved. Hours later, as she stepped out of her building to meet her lawyer, a familiar black Mercedes pulled up. Daniel stepped out, looking disheveled for the first time she'd ever seen him. Tie loosened, hair unkempt, eyes hollow. "Alina," he said, voice softer than usual. "Can we talk?" She froze on the sidewalk, gripping her purse. What could we possibly have left to say? He exhaled sharply. "Look, I messed up, okay? I shouldn't have said those things yesterday. It was heat of the moment." She stared at him. "You mocked me in front of a judge. In front of your fiancée. That wasn't heat of the moment, that was who you are." Daniel rubbed his temples. "I didn't know your father had what?" She interrupted. "Money, influence." "That he didn't see through you." He flinched, realizing how transparent his motives sounded. "Alina, come on. I just thought maybe we could start over. She let out a broken laugh. You ended our marriage, Daniel. You traded loyalty for ego. What exactly do you want from me now? Daniel's voice dropped lower. I'm in trouble. She blinked. What kind of trouble? He looked away, jaw tight. Investments. The clinic I opened downtown, my partner bailed. I'm drowning in debt. If I don't come up with 200 grand in 30 days, I'll lose everything. Alina crossed her arms. You mean the clinic you opened with her? The same one you left me for? He nodded slowly, shame flickering in his eyes. Yeah, something inside her, something old and tender, wanted to pity him. But her father's words returned, grounding her. Don't lose your kindness. But don't let anyone mistake it for weakness. She said softly, I can't help you, Daniel. He stepped closer. Alina, please. I know I don't deserve it, but you have the foundation now, your dad's money. If you just loan me enough to stabilize the clinic, stop. Her voice cracked, but she held firm. You didn't want me when I had nothing. Don't come crawling back, because I finally have something you want. For a long moment, Daniel said nothing. The street noise filled the space between them, a passing bus, the chatter of pedestrians, a dog barking. Then his voice turned cold again. You always were too emotional. No wonder I outgrew you. Alina took a step back. You didn't outgrow me, Daniel. You just lost yourself. She turned away, leaving him standing on the sidewalk, and walked straight into her lawyer's office. Inside, Mr. Hughes, her father's old attorney, greeted her warmly. You look more like Raymond every day, stronger than you realize. Alina smiled faintly. I don't feel strong. That's how strength starts, he said gently, handing her a folder. Your father made sure this foundation could help thousands. The only question now is what will you do with it? That question lingered all day. By afternoon, Alina visited one of the Carter medical clinics, a small facility in a struggling Chicago neighborhood. Inside, she saw exhausted nurses, flickering lights, and patients waiting hours to be seen. The administrator, Mrs. Rivera, looked up hopefully when Alina introduced herself. You're Mr. Carter's daughter, she asked, her eyes softening. He was a good man, helped keep this place running, even when we couldn't pay staff for weeks. Alina felt a lump in her throat. I want to make sure that never happens again. Mrs. Rivera smiled through tears. Then your father's dream is still alive. Later that evening, as Alina walked through the quiet halls of the clinic, she paused in front of a plaque on the wall. It read, Carter Medical Foundation, built on compassion. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the metal. For the first time in a long while, she saw not a broken woman, but someone becoming whole again. But peace never lasts long when ghosts from the past still walk the earth. 2 days later, Alina came home to find a letter taped to her apartment door. Her stomach tightened as she read the first line. If you don't help me, I'll make sure your precious foundation collapses with me. No signature. But she didn't need one. It was Daniel's handwriting. Alina's hands trembled. She stepped inside, locking the door behind her, heart pounding. She thought of her father again, his warning about people showing their true colors when money was on the table. Now Daniel's mask had slipped completely that night. She sat at her kitchen table, staring at the letter under the glow of a single lamp. Her phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number, this time. You think you're better than me now? Let's see how long that lasts. Her pulse quickened. She knew she couldn't ignore this anymore. Alina opened her laptop, pulled up the Carter Foundation's security and financial documents, and began checking for irregularities. Within minutes, she found them unauthorized access attempts, someone trying to reroute funds. Daniel was desperate and dangerous. Alina took a deep breath and whispered to herself, Dad, if you can see me, I need your strength, right now. She reached for her phone and called Mr. Hughes. I think Daniel's trying to hack into the foundation. I need your help. I'll handle it, he said firmly. Don't confront him yet. We'll set things right, the legal way. But deep down, Alina knew Daniel wouldn't stop. Not until she faced him herself. The woman he'd left broken was gone. What stood in her place? Now was someone her father would be proud of. The storm was coming again, but this time, Alina was ready to face it head-on. Rain pelted against the glass of Alina's office window as the Chicago skyline blurred under gray clouds. Her reflection looked back at her, calm, steady, but underneath that composure, a storm brewed. Daniel's threats weren't just words now. They were actions. The bank had frozen one of the foundation's accounts overnight due to suspicious transactions. Her phone buzzed. Mr. Hughes, again. Alina, his voice came sharp and hurried. You were right. Someone tried to redirect $200,000 from the foundation's charity fund. We traced the IP address. Her pulse quickened, and it leads back to Daniel's clinic. Elena's eyes closed. Her heart twisted between anger and disbelief. He's actually stealing from a charity for sick children. I'm afraid so, Hughes replied. We've already filed a formal complaint. The police will be investigating, but I'd recommend you stay cautious. Desperate men don't act rationally. She hung up slowly. Outside, thunder rolled through the city. By evening, Elena's small apartment was dimly lit. The only sound, the hum of rain. She tried to focus on paperwork, but a loud knock on her door made her jump. Her first instinct was to ignore it. Then came the second knock, louder this time. Alina, open the door. We need to talk. Daniel's voice. Her hands clenched into fists. Go away, Daniel. Please, he said, tone frantic now. They froze my accounts. I just need you to listen. She opened the door slightly, chain still latched. He stood there, drenched, wild-eyed, no trace of arrogance left. He looked like a man stripped bare by his own greed. What do you want? She asked coldly. They're saying, I stole from your foundation. I didn't mean to. He ran his hands through his wet hair. It was supposed to be temporary. I was going to return it once my clinic recovered. You stole from a hospital fund, Daniel. Her voice broke, part fury, part heartbreak. Children depend on that money. I didn't think it would get this bad. He shouted, his voice cracking. You don't understand, Alina. My partner disappeared. The investors pulled out because of you. She snapped. Because you lie, you manipulate, and you destroy everything good around you. He slammed a hand against the doorframe, making her flinch. I made one mistake, and now you want to ruin my life. She stared at him through the narrow gap, rainwater dripping down his face. You ruined your own life, and you tried to take mine down with it. His shoulders sagged. For the first time, he looked defeated. I just wanted to win. I couldn't stand seeing you do better than me. There it was, the truth, raw and ugly. Elena's voice softened, almost a whisper. You wanted to destroy me because I moved on. He didn't answer, just looked down, shame clouding his expression. I loved you once, Daniel, she said quietly. I gave you everything I had. But love doesn't mean handing over my soul. My father tried to warn me about men who only love when they're winning. He swallowed hard. You think you're so perfect now. Look at you, the daughter of a rich man, running his empire. She took a slow breath. No, Daniel. I'm a woman who rebuilt herself after you broke her. That's all. He clenched his jaw, eyes burning with something between regret and bitterness. Then he turned abruptly and stormed off into the rain. Disappearing down the hall, Alina closed the door, leaning against it, her breath trembling. The encounter left her shaken, but not afraid. Not anymore. By morning, the news broke. Local doctor under investigation for fraud and embezzlement. Daniel's face flashed across the TV in her office. His clinic had been shut down pending inquiry. The weight of it all hit her, not joy, not revenge, but grief. Grief for the man she once believed in. Later that day, as she visited one of the children's wards her father had funded, she met a little girl named Lily, 8 years old, bald from chemotherapy, smiling with unshakable brightness. Miss Alina, Lily said, clutching a teddy bear. Are you the lady who built this place? Alina knelt beside her. My father started it. I'm just trying to keep his dream alive. My mum says people like you are angels, the girl said sweetly. You help people you don't even know. Tears welled in Elena's eyes. No, sweetheart. People like you remind us what matters most. That night, she returned home, emotionally drained yet at peace. She poured herself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the rain return, softer this time. Then her phone rang again. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered, Alina. Daniel's voice was weak, broken. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. There was a pause. Wind howled through the receiver. I lost everything, he whispered. But maybe that's what I needed to finally see what I became. Her chest ached. Daniel, I don't hate you. I just wish you'd realized this before you destroyed so much. I know, he said quietly. Take care of yourself, okay? The line went dead. Alina stared at her reflection in the dark window. The woman, looking back at her, no longer trembled. She was steady, strong, and calm, just like her father once was. A few weeks later, the police informed her that Daniel had turned himself in. He'd admitted to the fraud, taken full responsibility, and was cooperating to return what he could. When she read that report, Alina didn't feel victory, she felt closure. She stood outside the courthouse one more time, the same place where everything had ended between them, the same building where the will had been read. But this time, she wasn't broken or mocked. She walked away, with her head high. Sunlight cutting through the clouds above her father's voice seemed to echo in her heart. Forgive. But never forget your worth. As she drove back toward the Carter Foundation, the skyline glowed golden. A sense of peace finally settled in her chest, not because justice was served, but because she had chosen healing over hate. Yet fate wasn't done writing her story just yet. There was still one final chapter waiting, one she never saw coming. The courtroom was silent, except for the faint hum of the ceiling fan. The air felt heavy, tense, as though everyone was holding their breath. Benjamin sat at his table, his once perfect posture now replaced by a nervous slouch. His attorney leaned in and whispered, "We can appeal if," but Benjamin didn't hear him. His eyes were fixed on the front, where the judge shuffled through the remaining pages of Robert Bennett's will. Amelia stood across the room. Her calm, almost regal presence contrasted sharply with Benjamin's disarray. Dressed in a deep navy suit, her hair pinned neatly back, she exuded quiet strength, the kind that comes from surviving heartbreak and rebuilding from the ground up. The judge adjusted his glasses. "To my beloved son-in-law, Benjamin Clark," he began, reading from the document, "I leave nothing. Not a penny, not an acre, not even the smallest of shares in Bennett Holdings." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Benjamin's face flushed crimson. "What?" he shouted, half rising from his seat. "That's ridiculous. I managed his company for years." The judge raised a hand to silence him. "Sit down, Mr. Clark. Let me finish." Benjamin obeyed, jaw clenched, eyes wild with disbelief. The judge continued, "To my daughter, Amelia Bennett Clark, I leave the entirety of my estate, including Bennett Holdings, the family mansion, and all assets under my name." The sound of pens dropping, murmurs spreading, and reporters whispering filled the room. Amelia's lips parted slightly, her expression unreadable. She hadn't known. Robert had never told her about this, not even in their final conversations. Benjamin looked at her with fury and confusion. "You knew, didn't you? You knew all along," he barked, pointing at her. "This was your plan. You manipulated him." Amelia turned to him, her voice low but steady. "I didn't manipulate anyone, Ben. My father saw who you really were, long before I did." He laughed bitterly. "You think this will make you happy? Taking everything I built?" Amelia stepped forward slowly. "You built nothing, Ben. You used people. You used me." Her voice cracked slightly, but she didn't back down. "And now, you're seeing what real consequences look like." Benjamin stood abruptly, knocking over his chair. "You'll regret this. I'll take it all in court." The judge banged his gavel. "Order, Mr. Clark. One more outburst and you'll be held in contempt." He froze, breathing hard, his pride visibly crumbling. The realization finally hit him. Everything was gone. The company, the mansion, the life he'd built on Amelia's family name. Amelia didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply turned, picked up her documents, and walked toward the exit, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Outside, the late afternoon sun painted the courthouse steps in warm gold. The moment she stepped into the light, the weight of years lifted from her shoulders. Her mother, Margaret, waited nearby, tears glistening in her eyes. "You did it," Margaret whispered, hugging her tightly. "You finally closed that chapter." Amelia nodded, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. "I didn't win, Mum. I just, let go." Benjamin stumbled out moments later, his tie loosened, hair disheveled. Reporters swarmed him, shouting questions. "Mr. Clark, any comment on losing the inheritance? Did you know about the will? Are you planning to appeal?" He shoved past them, his once proud stride now reduced to a desperate shuffle. For the first time, there was no one to impress, no spotlight to bask in, just the echo of his own downfall. Weeks passed. Amelia moved back into her father's mansion, not for luxury, but for closure. She restored it, not as a shrine to her past, but as a home for new beginnings. One evening, as she sat on the porch with her mother, a gentle breeze rustling through the trees, Margaret spoke softly. "You know, your father was never one for revenge. He just wanted you to have peace." Amelia smiled faintly. "I think he knew this was the only way I'd truly move on." She looked up at the sky, painted in hues of pink and gold. "Funny thing about life, it doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you need." Miles away, Benjamin sat alone in a dimly lit apartment. His once luxury watch, now pawned, his phone silent. He stared at an old photo their wedding day. Amelia's eyes were full of trust back then, his full of pride. He set the photo down, rubbing his temples, a rare moment of regret washing over him. He whispered, "I had it all." Back at the mansion, Amelia's phone buzzed. A text, unknown number. "I'm sorry for everything." Then she read it once, sighed, then deleted it. She turned back toward the house, where light spilled warmly from the windows. Her future wasn't behind her anymore, it was right there, waiting. As she walked inside, her voice echoed softly, half to herself, half to the memory of her father. "You were right, Dad. Love and legacy don't come from power. They come from peace." And with that, Amelia closed the door, leaving behind not just the courtroom drama or the failed marriage, but the pain that once defined her. This time, she wasn't walking away in tears. She was walking toward freedom.